Welcome everybody, Shir number 965. We're learning today Le'ilui Nishmas Moshe Dov Ben Rabaran Zisel, Le'ilui Nishmas Blima Basra Moshe, and L'Refua Shalema Yehuda Arya Leib Ben Hinder Shataka Refua Shalema B'Seich Shar Chayli Yisrael. Okay, getting back to our malacha of MEMACHAIK. So we started talking about last share in reference to food, MEMACHAIK or MEMAREACH. Smearing, smoothing out, does that apply to food? So in general, we said as long as one is eating the food, we mentioned from the Ramah, it's a regular edible food, so then there's no MEMACHAIK, there's no MEMAREACH. So now the question comes up, what about if one is going to use food for some other purpose? And that purpose will involve smearing. For example, let's say someone's chapped lips, or their lips are very dry and they want to smear butter. They want to smear grease or butter on their lips. No intention of eating, it's just they're using it for a smearing for the oils. Would there be a problem of smearing that on one's lips? Because the bottom line is you're smoothing out a bar of butter and there's no eating going on. So Lamaisa brings down the Sefer Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS in Perik Yod Aleph, number 33. Lamed Gimel Lamaisa, he says like this: butter, jam, honey, chocolate, and so on. When it comes to regular foods and any other type of spread, may be smeared or smoothed out on a slice of bread. But Lamaisa, he says further, that's a spreading of food items, these food items for the purpose other than food, for a purpose other than eating, if we want to call it, is taka aser to do. So he brings down an example like we just said. Therefore, margarine or butter should not be smeared onto one's chapped lips or onto a burn. Let's say somebody has chapped lips, like we said, or a burn and so on. Not going into the halachas of refuah right now. But plain and simple, the smearing part would be running into a problem because of the fact that they're using the food for not a item, and it's a hard item, which we mentioned in the past, and you're smoothing out the surface, going into the malacha of MEMACHAIK. So now the Sefer Learning Shabbos in 3 minutes brings down from the Bir Halacha, actually from Siman Shin Chaf Aleph, the Maschal Tavei, who says straight up, V'da da'af damashma l'kuli alma, according to everybody, Midyaraisa in MEMACHAIK ba'oichlin. There's no min Torah, at least there's no MEMACHAIK. By foods, when it comes to foods, tells us the Bir Halacha, Hainu imimareach ha'oichel ba'atzmai. That's if you're smearing the food itself. In other words, you're smearing the food itself, and you're going to be using the food for eating and so on. Aval im, because of the fact what we're going to see, possibly there might be derabbanans, but be it as it may, aval im soy pi nekev. For example, if one clogs up a hole with the food, right? They'll take something that's a shmearable item, which we'll see an example in a minute. Soisim boy pi nekev a chavis. They'll clog up a hole from a barrel or something like that. Umimorchai. Malmala shaykh by shem MEMACHAIK, and they're going to smear it a little bit, whatever the case is. Even though it's a food, it's an edible food, right? It's the same type of food that I smear in my bread, but now they're using log up a hole in a barrel. Shaykh by shem MEMACHAIK. There would be falling into the isser of MEMACHAIK. So brings down the Sefer Learning Shabbos in 3 minutes. Interesting case that somebody, let's say, took chewing gum, right? By chewing gum, one may not plug a hole with chewing gum. Right, somebody has a hole, and on Shabbos to have chewing gum, and it's a shmearable type of a thing. Once it's chewed, possibly they want to plug up a hole, so this is not allowed to be done. This would be running into the isser of MEMACHAIK, and if it's in a smearing process. He brings also the case from the Shmir Shabbos HILCHOS that we saw that one may not smear butter or margarine on one's lips to prevent chapping, even though you'll say, well, there's no chapping going on. They just want to do it to keep their lips moist. So the same thing, smearing butter or margarine, when it's not used in the eating sense on bread or so on, would not be allowed. So it's just an interesting thing. I mean, it's aser is aser, but the Lamaisi brings down the Sefer Learning Shabbos in 3 minutes that it will be aser midrabbanan. There is a rabbinic decree, Lamaisi aser midrabbanan, forbidding smearing or smoothing out of food for non-food items. Okay, so Lamaisi brings this down as a drabbanan. So the Ramah brings on interesting that which he said, Lamaisa, that in general there's no MEMAREACH, there's no smearing on regular foods when you get to eat them. So then the Ramah brings on interesting that he says in reference to an apple, smearing an apple, and the Mishabur explains what does he mean by a apple like a cooked apple type of a thing, like baked apple, or along those lines, onto bread, that one tavayel love bracha. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. They don't say it's also, but it's a good thing not to do. So the Bir Halacha asks, what's the difference? We just said that by food there's no schmearing. I could schmear my peanut butter on my bread. What's the problem? But what does this baked apple, have to do with anything? So the Mishabura says, interesting point, that it's a type of a thing whereby, I guess, in those days people used to be very makbid to smear it very nicely. It should look very nicely, and therefore it looks like mimareach. So he doesn't say it's awesome, but he says tavi alav brach. It's a good thing. So through that, the Sfarim bring down lemaisa. We see that if it's a type of, if somebody's doing smearing a certain thing, even though it falls under the food category per se, if they're doing it and they're makbid for the look, that it should look very nice, even though, let's say, like an icing on a cake, we'll see. So then it's tavi alav brach. It's a good thing. One should be careful not to do it, and at least not to be makbid on the smearing itself. So he brings down, does the Sefer Shabbos, learning Shabbos in 3 minutes, that it's better. He said it's better. It's tavi alav bracha, meaning a person gets a bracha. It's a good thing. They can't say that it's aser, but it's better not to spread icing on cake just for the sake of beauty. Even you're going to put icing on a cake and you're doing it for the beauty, that one has to be careful to say, well, the bottom line is the cake is a food. People are going to eat it, but if you're doing it just for beauty, there is such an Indian whereby one gets a bracha, tavi alav bracha, not to do it. Brings down another interesting case which might fall under this. Also spreading, he brings down from the actually from the Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. The Sefer, again, learning Shabbos in 3 minutes, brings from the Kitzer Shulchan Aruch that it's better. Again, not saying aser, but it's better not to smooth the surface of a tuna or egg salad if one is doing so merely for the presentation purpose. In other words, for the looks. Let's say by a kiddush or by a simcha, when somebody wants it to look very nice, right? So they do it in a certain way. Now, we're not talking about whereby one is building a picture of a bird and they're shaping it out, forming it out. Those are other problems which fall under kaisev or writing or boina building. But over here, they're just smearing it so it should look very nice. So he brings down the Maisa. In these cases also, it's better, one should be careful. It's better not to do it. Again, to say it's aser, we can't say it's aser because the bottom line is it is food. But the Lefid Ramah, the Bir Halacha explains, it's better tavei alav bracha. Better not to do it. Okay, we'll end off with that just to read what he brings down, how he says it. If the purpose of smearing or smoothing is not for eating, it is better that not in the cases where we said just to plug up a hole or mamish for totally nothing to do with anything, like for the lips, that's a separate issue. That we said is not allowed, midrabanan. But if the purpose of smearing, smoothing out is not for the eating, it is better not to do so, tavi alav bracha, even though it will be eaten. That's the point. By the butter on the lips, it's not going to be eaten. By the chewing gum in the hole, it's not going to be eaten. We'll see some other cases also. But if somebody's doing it, even though it's going to be eaten, like in the case of the icing on the cake, or in the case of the tuna fish egg salad, they want to make it look nice, presentation and so on, even though it will be eaten, like we saw in the Ramah, and how the Bir Halacha explained it, it's better not to do it. This is because it resembles, we said, Bir Halacha said, it looks like MEMACHAIK. This is because it resembles the Torah prohibition of preparing leather. Again, it's not a Torah prohibition, it's not, and even to say it's also, you can't say, but tavi alav bracha, it's better not to do. Okay, we're going to continue next time. Thank you for listening. Atzlach and bracha, kol tov.